Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Terry Camp coming at you live on a Thursday night, about a week after I did my last live. And candidly, I'm on this not really because I wanted to, but some things transpired in the last week. And I've learned that when these things happen, we should do more of what got us in the situation. And so the last live I did was about 7 days ago, and I titled it The Last Days. And I went through about 18 different points about why I happen to believe that we are very, 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 very near the tribulation time. And after that got posted, lo and behold, man, I started to get attacked. And no, not by people, but by the enemy, the real enemy, the devil. And it started on Saturday, and I didn't really grasp what was going on. I mean, I've learned over the years what it feels like to be attacked. Many times, I don't know about all y'all, but I don't know if you realize when Satan is attacking you, and when you're having spiritual warfare going on. Most of the time, if we're not out doing anything to impact anybody's lives, Satan doesn't really need to mess with us. We mess ourselves up just fine. And so there's not really a lot of spiritual warfare going on. But when you're impacting people for the church, for Christ's church, the kingdom, Satan doesn't like that. And so lo and behold, I realized that this was happening, and some things went on throughout the week, the last 7 days. And a couple of days ago, I realized, okay, that is why I got attacked. And so when I feel that, I'm like, okay, Lord, I just need to know if in fact that is the case. And if so, I am totally cool with it. Now, a bunch of years ago, about 12 years ago, I remember I was doing something. We had a pretty good sized organization at one point, and I was trying to pray for everybody, every morning and everything. And I'm like, man, this is going to take forever. The team kept getting bigger and bigger. So I thought, oh, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll just start praying for people when I'm talking to them, like at the end of a phone call or talking to them in person. I say, hey, man, how can I pray for you? And I did that for a couple of days, and holy cow, did I get attacked. I mean, woof, Satan came at me with both barrels, to the degree, and this was just where I was in my walk at that time. I was like, hey, no thanks. I don't need this in my life. So I stopped doing it, literally, because I just wasn't strong enough spiritually to deal with that. And so now I've learned to recognize when that's happening. I also know how to do battle, because I don't do battle. We put on the armor of God. God does the battling for us. Jesus does that. And so now I recognize it. So when it's happening, I was like, if that's the reason, the live that I did last week, that Satan doesn't like that stuff, I'm okay with that, perfectly fine with that. Just tell me. So I asked the Lord for confirmation, and sure enough, he gave me that confirmation. Once I asked, I had it within 24 hours. So what that tells me is that I need to do more of what got Satan torqued, because it will have an impact in people's lives. So hopefully, over the next few minutes, I will not take long tonight, but I wanted to share a couple of things that I felt like were left unsaid last week, and that's really what I wanted to get into. It won't take long, but man, I'm just telling you, the next 7-8 minutes, there's some really stunning stuff. And so I talked last week about September 26th, and if you didn't see it, you can see the live right down below on my Facebook page. You can catch it on YouTube as well. But I talked about September 26th being a day where is the beginning of the next Shemitah cycle in the Jewish calendar, which is a 7-year Shemitah. And if you remember, Daniel had the prophecy. Well, you might not remember. If you don't study the Bible, you don't know this, but hopefully you'll go read Daniel chapter 9 to find out about this particular prophecy that the angel gave him about the 70 weeks. And we now know that the 70 weeks are 77-year periods. 69 of those occurred, and then the Messiah showed up and was cut off, but not for himself. That would be Jesus. And he was cut off, he was killed, and then the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, and then the 70th week has still not occurred. Now, the thing is, Daniel was talking about Shemitah years, not like just random 7-year periods, because the Jewish calendar is set up a certain way because God gave them that calendar. Okay, and so Israel is God's timepiece. That's all. That's what you need to understand. Israel is God's timepiece, not us in the U.S., to be honest with you. So understand that. So the next Shemitah, the next 7-year cycle, begins on September 26th. It also happens to be the second day of the Feast of Trumpets. And it's, when you start looking at the church, it says with a loud trumpet, the last trump sounds. And I believe, some argue with this, totally cool, go do your own research, that it will be on the Feast of Trumpets, because they have trumpet blasts all day on one day, all day the next day, and then there's one long, loud blast at the very end of the second day of the Feast of Trumpets. So that's the same day, September 26th. It also happens to be the beginning of the year of Jubilee. And the year of Jubilee is 7, so 49 years, and then it's the 50th year in the Jewish calendar is the Sabbath year. Big deal, big celebration. A lot of things happen. Won't get into that right now. All I'm going to say is this year, September 26th, all three of those things line up, and they won't happen again like that for another 50 years. So it's a big deal in the Jewish calendar. And I say that because it says, Israel became a nation in 1948. So the signs of the times that Jesus laid out in Matthew 24, Luke 21, that those things would not, that the generation would not pass until those things happen. So Israel becomes a nation again in 1948. A generation is about 80 years, 70 years, unless the man has strength, and it's 80 years. And so we're moving into we're in the 73rd year right now. So 80 years would be 2028. So right around that, 1948 to 2028. So that would be a generation. So all these things would not happen. And so now if you're looking at another 50 years before that happens again, for sure that generation is gone. So that's where I'm getting all that. So I wanted to kind of close the loop on that. The other thing that was really important is to understand this whole thing about who Jesus is. Because some of you out there, I know you might think you know Jesus. I know you might hear the word. Some of you believe in God. Some of you believe in the universe. I mean, obviously the universe exists, but it's because God breathed the universe into existence. It's not that the universe answers anything, although humanists would really love for you to think that. That is not the case. It is God the Father who created the universe, who is the person that you want to go get your answers from. And so Jesus shows up on the scene, and candidly, when I was looking at doing the live last week, there was a point where I was like, man, I don't think I really want to do this. Is this real? And I touched on this on my last one, and just realizing the reality of Jesus. Now you got to understand, all of time is marked by that event, that Jesus was born and then Jesus was crucified. Those are facts. They're absolute facts. No one can argue that Jesus walked the earth. No one. And it's a historical fact. It's not just in the Bible, it's in the Roman history, all kinds of stuff. It's a fact. Jesus lived. That's not the issue. Every faith out there believes Jesus was a great prophet, a wise teacher, whatever. As a Christian, we believe he was also God in the flesh. Let me give you some statistics that will kind of blow your mind. And this is really what I want to cover today, to help you understand why, if you haven't really understood who Jesus is, why you might want to go learn, why you might want to pull out a Bible and start to read. Because if the tribulation begins on September 26th, that means we got 3 months before that happens. And if you are not a believer in Christ before that event happens, then you will be here and live through the tribulation period, and it will be very, very difficult. So let me just give you some facts, okay? These are so Jesus fulfilled more than 300 prophecies. 300. One person fulfilled 300 prophecies. Now, let me give you the statistics about fulfilling just 8, and then 16, and then 48. And what the chances, what the probability of one person fulfilling those is. So a gentleman named Chuck Missler did all this math, and you can find that in this book right here, which I think is awesome. Learn the Bible in 24 Hours by Chuck Missler. Man, if you want to have your mind blown, go read that guy right there. And in there, he goes through what he calls composite probabilities. And what that really is this. If there were 100 people in a room and you were blindfolded, and you'd go in and you had to pick a male or a female. You went up to touch somebody, you would have and there were 50 male and 50 female, you would have a 50-50 chance, right? 1 out of 2 that you would touch a male or a female, right? Because there are 50 male, 50 female in a room of 100 people. Well, now if you take that and add to that, go find a left-handed female. Well, now you have a composite probability, because now not everybody's left-handed, right? I don't know what the percentage of left-handed people are, but let's just say it was 1 out of 10. But now they got to be a female, so you got to multiply the 10% chance and the 50% chance to get the composite probability of finding a left-handed female being blindfolded out of the 100 people. So understand that that's the process that he goes through to get this. So he took 8 prophecies, and these are pretty random, pretty simple. No, the easiest of them to fulfill, like Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. It didn't say Jesus, the Messiah, would be born in Bethlehem. Well, a lot of people are born in Bethlehem. Some people are born in Bethlehem, but you see the point, that the chance of somebody being born in Bethlehem, is a lot of different people. But when you start to add that to the rest of the prophecies that he fulfilled, now you get the composite probability. So that's enough of the math. Now let me give you some pretty wild statistics. So for Jesus to fulfill 8, just 8 of the 300, more than 300 prophecies, it would be like this. It would be like taking silver dollars and piling them up all over the state of Texas, 2 feet deep, and having one silver dollar marked with an X. And you go randomly place that silver dollar across the state of Texas, and it's filled 2 feet deep with silver dollars. And the probability of you pulling out that exact coin that's been marked out of all of that is the same probability as Jesus fulfilling just 8 of the prophecies. That one person would fulfill 8. Now, if you're tracking with me, that's a small chance. Then let's talk about fulfilling 16 of the prophecies, okay? Just 16. Remember, there were more than 300. To fulfill 16 of all 16 of the prophecies, you would need to get a ball whose radius, that's half of the distance, because the diameter is the full distance one side to the other. The radius of the ball would be 30 times the distance from the earth to the sun. So think about how long that is, how big that is. That's just the radius. So it's basically 60 times the size of the distance from earth to sun. Fill that with silver dollars and have one marked in it. And the chances of you pulling out that one random silver dollar is the same probability of one person fulfilling just 16 of those prophecies. Last one. I need to read this to you because this will blow your mind right here. The chances, we're going to triple that, and we're going to say 48. What would be the chances of one person in history fulfilling 48 of the Old Testament prophecies? Not 300, 48. All right, here we go. We need a model that allows us to imagine this level of probability. Silver dollars will no longer work because they're too big. In fact, what we need to do now is use the smallest unit we can conceive of, which is an atom. To illustrate the level of probability, we'll make a ball out of every atom in our galaxy, which is about 10 to the 66 atoms. But that leaves us way short of our target of 10 to the 157. That's how big this chance is. 10 to the 157. That's 10 with 157 zeros behind it, and it's the chance of 1 out of all of that. So we'll proceed to make one of those balls consisting of every atom in the galaxy for every atom in the galaxy. Now we have 10 to the 68 times 10 to the 66 atoms, or 10 to the 132nd atoms. But we're a long way short from 10 to the 157 atoms needed. So what we'll do is repeat that mental exercise, make a ball of every atom in the universe for every atom in the universe. And once every second since the universe began, which is commonly held to be 10 to the 17th seconds. Believe it or not, that will bring us to only 10 to the 149 atoms, still short by, ready, 100 million times. So the idea is that pulling one atom out of the galaxy of atoms for atoms, one out of that many is the chances of one person fulfilling 48 of the prophecies. And Jesus fulfilled 300 plus. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because when I got done last week, the Lord was pretty clear in just kind of saying, hey, got to tell them, what do they need to do about this whole rapture thing? And it's important that you understand that Jesus lived. And I was doing a sermon one time, and it hit me that I never knew my great-grandfather. I'll bet most of you on here, if you knew your great-grandfather, well, probably most of you didn't, but let's say you did. And but let's talk about your great-great-grandfather. And did you know your great-great-grandfather? Do you even know the great-great-grandfather's name? I don't know who my great-great-grandfather was. And don't know the name, none of that stuff, haven't done any of the genealogy. So, but even though I don't know him, I know that that person lived. And I know that because I'm living. And so that person had to live, even though I never met that person, even though I never knew that person. I don't know that person's name. And I think a lot of people are kind of like that with Jesus, in that, yeah, okay, I'm in that he lived and things like that, but it doesn't really mean anything to us, because in my life, whoever my great-grandfather was totally irrelevant to me. It doesn't matter. And I think a lot of people feel that way about Jesus when it comes to having that conversation. But the reality is this: he did live, and it's a historical fact. You just heard the chances of one person fulfilling just 48 of the prophecies, and it's infinitesimal. It's just mind-bogglingly small for one person to fulfill just 48 of those prophecies, but he did. So the question is this: the question is, who is Jesus? Who do you say he is? And that was the big question that Jesus asked his guys when they were all hanging out. Jesus said, hey, who do the people say I am? And they gave him different answers. You know, some say Elijah, some say John the Baptist, some say a great prophet, and all kinds of different answers. And then Jesus got specific and he said, hey, who do you say I am? And that's the only question that matters, gang, because at the end of the day, the rapture is going to happen at some point. The tribulation is going to happen at some point. And I think back to the day when Jesus showed up as a baby on earth. That happened. And I do a Bible study on Sunday nights. And I was going through, I think it was in Second Peter, and I was just reading, and the comment I made to the group was that what was future at one point, future tense at one point, in one verse had become the past. That prophets of old, the Old Testament prophets, wrote about these things, about Jesus in the future. And at that point in the New Testament, they were looking back at those things that were at one point future events as past events. Meaning Jesus showed up and fulfilled those things and then was crucified and rose again on the third day. And so that's the big question. Fact, Jesus lived. Fact, Jesus was crucified. Fact, Jesus died. Faith, that he got up out of the tomb and overcame death for us. And the question is, do you believe that for salvation? Is that what you're hanging your hat on, or are you hanging your entrance into heaven based on what you do, based on what society says, based on what the latest fads are, based on what culture says? Or is it about what the universe says? Because you're going to have a bad day if it's any of those things on the day that Jesus comes to take his bride back. And in Ephesians chapter 5, there's a whole section in there where there's a about husbands and wives and how they should treat each other. And it says this, it says, but I am talking about Christ and the church. The bride is the church. The groom is Jesus. And the last thing I'll share is this. In the Jewish culture, when a young man wanted to go take a wife, he would bring the wife price, the bride price, and the father of the bride would say yes, no, whatever. But then the Jewish man would have to go build the huppah, the house that he and his wife were going to live in. All right. So he would go do that. And then he would come back. Once the house was ready, he would come back to get his bride and take her to be one, right? The two shall become one. But he couldn't go do that until the father of the bride, the father of the groom inspected the house and said, yes, it's okay. And he would never know that the groom, and this at this point, would never know when the father was going to approve of the building, the huppah. And once the father did approve it, then the groom went to get the bride, to bring the bride back to live with him. Now, why am I saying this? Because Jesus said to his guys, look, I'm going to build a place for you. And I'm going to come back and bring you to be with me where I'm building a house. And that groom, Jesus, came to earth to build his bride, the church. And he said, I'm going to build a huppah for you in heaven. And I'm going to come back one day and take you, my bride, to be with me in heaven. If it wasn't so, I would have told you what he said. So this is the same thing. You got to understand, it's a Jewish book, the Bible, about a Jewish savior. And at the end times, it's going to be about Israel on God's timepiece, because the church, us who are living in the age of grace, will be raptured. And then those who don't believe, God will turn his attention back to Israel. 144,000 will emerge. They will begin to evangelize all over the world, predominantly in Israel. And then the whole great tribulation breaks out. And this is what you don't want to be here for. And ultimately, Israel will finally cry out for their Lord and Savior, Jesus, and Jesus will come back, and then the 1,000-year reign will begin. And so that is what's happening at this point. If you don't understand all these things, or maybe some of these things are confusing, hit me up, let me know. Happy to chat about it. Do your own study. I mean, think about it. If in fact it was 3 months from now, don't you think you should be ready? Because if you're not, it will be a bad day on September 27th. And I'm not saying it's going to be the 26th. Okay, don't say, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you were looking for a candidate of a day that made a lot of sense as a day based on everything else that's going on, that day makes a lot of sense. So at the end of the day, it's about being ready, whatever that means. And in our world, that is having our walk with the Lord in good standing, that we believe that Jesus died for our sins, and we trust that that event, him doing that, is what allows us to have right standing with God and spend eternity there with him in heaven. So I just wanted to share that real quick. If you got some spiritual warfare going on in your life, congratulations, you're on the right track. Whatever it is you're doing, keep doing that. And just remember that God has already overcome, right? He that is in us is greater than he that is in the world. And don't forget that. And Satan only has as much power as God gives him. And all the stuff that's going on, if you look through the lens of society, if you look through a human lens, it looks like chaos in our world. If you look through a biblical lens, it's very, very exciting times. So anyway, just want to share that with you real quick. God bless you. You guys have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you on the next live, or hit me up and let's chat. All right, catch you later.